Good morning. Welcome to Undisputed. I'm Jenny Taft with Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharpe. How are you guys doing today?
I'm doing great, Jenny. You know what I'm saying? You know, I'm glad to get back in the studio, put my new duds on, you know. How you doing?
Really? Are those new?
Nah, they ain't new. They ain't new. But I just, you know, got
really?
tired of wearing, you know, athleisure.
Oh, really? I hear you. So what a show we're about to have today. You had a conversation with Drew Brees, and we are going to have a conversation with Lil Wayne about his experiences growing up in New Orleans around white cops.
Yes, yes. We're ready.
Boom.
Well done, guys. Got to get that in. You both look very nice. I agree. It's nice to see you guys dressing up for the show. And we do have a packed show, like Skip mentioned. Cannot wait for Lil Wayne, but I do want to get to the latest with Drew Brees after that conversation with Shannon. So last week, Brees apologized for comments he made about not supporting protests during the national anthem. Many of his teammates and players around the league accepted Brees' apology. And over the weekend, Drew called and spoke with Shannon on the phone for about 30 minutes. So Shannon, do you feel differently after your conversation with Brees yesterday? Please take us into the convo.
Well, Skip, I think it was Saturday that I received a text and said, Drew would like to reach out to you. And I'm like, Drew? Like Drew Brees. I said, okay, when? He says, would it be okay? I was like, sure, no problem. So he gave me, he got my number. I got him. He sent me a text. He's like, hey, man, I would like to reach out to you tomorrow. Is that okay? I text him back. So we kind of started engaging in the conversation, Skip, even before we actually had an actual conversation and getting the gist of what he was thinking, how he was feeling. I let him know what I was thinking, how I was feeling. So he called yesterday, said, is it okay if I call? I was like, yeah, I'm calling from a block number. So answer. I know you probably don't answer block calls. You're absolutely right. So he called Skip and we started talking. And I said, the floor is yours. You tell me what you're thinking, and then I'm going to tell you what I'm thinking and how, why I reacted the way I reacted. And he says, first of all, I want to apologize. I want to say that I'm sorry, not only just to you, but to the entire black community. He says, I can understand what I said, going back and looking at it, I can understand the feelings that you guys felt, because it does come off that I lack compassion, that I lack empathy, that I lack understanding. And that's not me. That's not my heart. He just says, if anything, if you know me, Shannon, and you don't really know me well, but we've been around each other. He says, I think you know that I have a good heart and that I've immersed myself in New Orleans since I arrived here. I think 06. He says, so for 15 years, I've been a pillar in the community. And he says, I don't want one bad mistake. I don't want one slip up to ruin everything that I've built. I said, Drew, what you have to understand is that for 1 second, we didn't want you to be Drew Brees. We wanted you to be one of us. We wanted you to feel if that was your brother, if that was your uncle, if that was your father. Mm-hmm. You're still a married father. You're still a doting dad. But for 1 second, you were black. Mm-hmm. How would you feel? And he said, I said, Drew, when you said, fought for the military, you do understand that not only were they fighting in a foreign land for freedoms over there, they were also fighting for freedoms back home. Like the freedom and the pride that you feel when you stand for that flag. Everybody does not feel that same sense of pride because they haven't been afforded some of the same opportunities that you and your ancestors have been afforded. He says, I understand that. He says, talking to a lot of my teammates and see the hurt that they felt. I said, Drew, let me break it down to you in a nutshell. What hurt the most is because it came from you. I said, Drew, no white quarterback in the history of the NFL has had black support like you got it. I said, we don't need to get into different quarterback. I said, but other quarterbacks could have said exactly what you said, and everybody would have been upset. But they said, you know what? I expected that from him. I expected nothing less. But given you in New Orleans, what you've done in the community with Katrina, donating $5 million out of your pocket during this pandemic to feed the homeless, the hungry. Mm-hmm. And Drew said, I said, Drew, why do you think your teammates lashed out like that? Because they couldn't believe that came from you. And after talking to him, Skip, I could feel the pain. And I'm not a guy that's easily forgiven. Mm-mm. You got to show me, Skip. And I said, and he said, so what should I do moving forward? I said, Drew, don't issue any more apologies. I said, your first apology, I said, let me tell you what's going to happen. I said, there's going to be a certain segment that says Drew Brees is only apologizing because he got caught in this firestorm. Now, there's going to be another group that says, you know what? I'm looking at his action, and they match his words. He said he was going to do this. He's doing this. You cannot concern yourself about the ones that's not going to be willing to forgive. Skip, I don't believe in a scarlet. I don't believe one incident should rule. I mean, there are certain things that can, but I don't believe him saying what he said should be the end of Drew Brees. I believe he deserves an opportunity for redemption because he's been too good in that community for let this one slip up undo 15 years of great service. And that's what I told him. I said, Drew, I'll be here. I said, my criticism was harsh. There's no question about that. And I understand that's probably why you're reaching out. But I wanted you to understand not only the hurt that the community felt, that I felt, because when Skip and I talked about this on Tuesday, the first name out of my mouth is I said, Drew Brees, we need you. I said, Drew, we need strong white men, powerful, influential, like you to help us get the ball across the finish line. And I said, Drew, I think you understand that. I think the blowback that you got I think it was deserving. But I also believe that you have a great heart, and I believe you will make right about the wrong that you spoke.
Okay. So, you obviously remember last Thursday, you were outraged.
Scathing.
It was raw, and it was as real as it gets.
Yes.
And you said the New Orleans Saints are fractured.
Yes.
And it's going to be very difficult to heal that wound.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Because not one or two, but all of the Black Star teammates of Drew Brees had condemned what he had said.
Correct.
And it was scathing on all parts. And remember, let me get the days right, it would have been Wednesday night.
Yes.
Malcolm Jenkins, when he heard this, just went completely over the edge in a great way.
Yes.
But he could not contain himself, so he made a video that he was about to post, and he said, Drew just called me.
Right.
And I'm sure some of the things you heard, although Drew had about 72 hours to sort of let it sink in what had exactly happened when he spoke to you yesterday.
Right.
But some of the things he said to you, I'm pretty sure he said to Malcolm.
Yes.
And Malcolm went ahead and posted the first really raw video with the caption that I talked to Drew, but I could not post this video.
Right.
Like, I just got to get this out of me.
Right.
And he went off on his teammate. And he said, even though you're my teammate, I cannot let this slide.
Right.
Because
nor should he.
You have such clout. He said, you have such privilege that you could have been our biggest advocate. And instead, you took this path. And then he said, you don't even understand history. And I'm just paraphrasing the way Malcolm did it. But he had tears in his eyes.
Yes.
And he was breaking up. And he said, our forefathers also fought in those wars you're talking about, especially World War II.
Yes.
And when they came back, it was not to a hero's welcome.
To the back of the bus.
Okay,
you still can't come in here.
So he was just incensed. And it felt like a bridge at least was on blazing fire.
Right.
I don't know if it'd been burned to the ground, but it was on fire. And you have often made the point to me, once a man shows himself, and we're not saying, nobody ever said he's racist, it's just that he doesn't get it. I go back to the Michael Thomas tweet. He don't know enough to know. Right? He's just oblivious to what we're going through. What it is to me, it's this elite white insensitivity where you just live in your own world and you're kind of like wide-eyed. And it's not that Drew Brees didn't hear about Trayvon Martin. What year was that, 2014?
Yeah.
Right in there. Okay, but let's go back to that one. Go back to Trayvon. It's not that Drew didn't hear or read about it. It just kind of went in one eye and out the other. He's insensitive to it because he's just fine in the world he lives in. But the world his teammates, a majority of his teammates live in, is an extremely different world. So did he hear about Eric Garner? Did he hear about Michael Brown? Heck, for that matter, did he hear about George Floyd? Well, sure, he heard about them, but they didn't hit his heart. He did not share any of your gut-wrenching feelings, your fear of how can we survive in this country today as black people. If we get pulled over by the cops, we could be dead. Okay, so that's the emotion of that moment. But then we heard from Shaq, who just happened to have been scheduled to be on the Zoom call the next day, just as a guest speaker. So he participated with his ears first because he got to hear Drew's emotional, tearful apology.
Yes.
And then he got to hear all of his black teammates start to chime in. And Shaq interpreted it on TNT the next night as it sounded pretty good to him, like his apology was accepted.
Right.
And then Shaq's message that I read today from, I believe it was Peter King, was that he told all the Saints, don't let the media tear you guys apart. Kobe and I let the media tear us apart.
Right.
Well, you did have something to do with getting torn apart. You were somewhat responsible because you were not.
You created a situation for media to tear.
That they were just reporting.
Correct.
Okay. And Drew stepped in it. You didn't step in it, or Malcolm didn't step in it. It wasn't. It's not the media creating a story.
Right.
It was created by Drew Brees.
Right.
Okay. So I'm back to the question. You've told me so many times, once a man shows you who he is that who he always is going to be? Can, if I can use this word, can Drew get woke? You know, can he be woke over the last 72 hours? Enough that Shannon Sharpe will say, okay, I won't look at him side-eye now. I'll accept him as sort of reformed here, as recovering from his position, right?
Skip, and I think the reason why Malcolm reacted kind of like I reacted is because it was Drew. And he said, Drew, you're such a person of prominence. This is what it's going to take. Guys like a Drew Brees, guys like these prominent, powerful white men that can say the exact same thing Shannon Sharpe can say. But because you're white, you talk like them, you travel in circles like them, they're more apt to receive it from you than receive it from me. So Skip, when what I started to think about, I was like, and that's what, remember Skip, I said, but this doesn't sound like Drew. I heard the guy that